to the Touchdown, the TD podcast, your favorite weekly football podcast. We're your hosts, Tony Falls and Dak Atwood. In today's episode, we'll be recapping our mock drafts from last week's episode. If you haven't watched that, stop, pause, go watch that, and come back. And breaking down what happened over this last weekend, the 2025 NFL Draft. While we were doing it fake, mock, they did it for real life. So you're going to go want to watch that episode because recapping those is our first topic, and you don't want to be behind the curve. So now that we have our overview of the episode out of the way, let's start with our mock drafts and how they went. So I'm going to throw Dax up real quick. Oh, that's the wrong one. Ha, silly me. Picks. There we go. So that's Dak's top 11 right there. So, Dak, do you remember your top 11 off the top of your noggin?
Yeah, actually, I have it written down.
Okay, perfect.
I only got one correct, I believe, in my top 11, and that was the number one overall pick in Gambler. So, I believe, and if you go to the next 22 or 21, there's only two correct in there.
22.
I only got three correct throughout the whole entire time, or the whole entire first round mock draft. I do have a lot of guys that made the first round, but not on the right teams, not on the right picks. So yeah, I only had three of them correct. I'm glad I don't get paid to do this because I'd be horribly wrong. And then you asked for my favorite pick that I got right.
Yeah, your favorite pick of the draft, of your mock draft, I should say.
And it's going to be Matthew Golden at 23 to the Packers. Packers finally did it, guys. And they took a wide receiver for the first time in the first round since 2002. Yep. So we're going to talk about that a little bit later. But that's my favorite pick that I got right so far in the first round.
Yeah. I mean, you had like three to choose from, so there you go. Me, on the other hand, I take in a lot of football. Dak had school. He has an excuse. I have an hour commute to and from work. So I listen to a lot of football podcasts, as you'll learn throughout this show, and mine was a lot more accurate. Out of my top 11, I had 8 right, whether it be the team they went to or the pick they went at. So Travis Hunter, while it wasn't to the Browns, he still went at number 2, and Mason Graham still went at number 5. Wasn't the Jacksonville Jaguars, but it was the Browns. So I'll take the first 8. It was literally the first 8 picks out of 11. And then after that, it took a little bit of a fall off. And then I hit on Tyler Warren to the Colts. I hit on Matthew Golden to the Packers. And then Josh Simmons to the Chiefs, which I can't stand because he may have been one of the best tackles if he didn't have injuries coming out of college. And then I would say my favorite pick that I was right about has to be Ashton Jeanty. As a Raiders fan, I needed him to be our pick, right? Because we didn't have a run game last year. As a Raiders fan, have had one good draft class that I can look back at, and it was last year's for Brock Bowers. At least first round, because we wasted so many picks in the last 5 years, right? We had Alex Leatherwood. Why? Cleveland Ferrell. Damon Arnett. I loved him, but Jonathan Abram, he was not what we needed. I'm not gonna say Henry Ruggs. He was a good player. He made a mistake.
He's got like 2 years until he's free. So
yeah, I think there's Josh Jacobs was on a podcast, I think this week or over the weekend, and said that he's looking to come back, and he's like, there's some teams that are interested. So we'll see how that goes. You'll hear it here first, or you come back to here because we'll have some takes on that.
Yes.
So that was our mock draft recap. Do you have any last things?
Yes. I did say Jackson Dart is a first-round quarterback, and he was quarterback 2 on my end, and it happened. Quarterback 2, he went 25 to the Giants. It would have been wild for me to put Dart at 3 to the Giants if we were mocking it that way, and we didn't mock with trades, anything like that. So
Mm-mm.
it would have been weird to do that. But I did
Yeah,
say Jackson Dart was a first round quarterback, and he
you
did
did.
indeed go in the first round.
I did give you a lot of flack for that too, but well, hold on. I gave you a lot of flack for him going at number 6. That's the flack I gave you for.
Fair.
I
That's
believed
fair.
the first round stuff, but so now our first real topic of the episode, outside of our recaps, are our draft winners and losers in terms of teams. Later in the podcast, we'll have our prospects winners and losers. So our first winners of the draft is. Hold on. Go back. Go back. Go back. Go back. Hold on. Where's it at? Why is this being stupid? Hold on. Pick the right thing. Thank you.
I believe it's the Baltimore
Is the
Ravens. Right? We both
Ravens.
talked
The
the Ravens.
Baltimore
Yeah.
Ravens. Yeah, I had it on the wrong slide on my little thingy majig. I'm still learning. So yeah, we both chose the Ravens as one of our winners from the draft. Dak, I'll let you kick off with your Baltimore Ravens winners and why.
Malachi Starks, he's gonna open up everything for Kyle Hamilton to be more versatile because there's gonna be a lot more. Uh, Malachi Starks is versatile in himself, so if he can pick roles and do stuff differently on a defensive side, gonna help everybody on that defense in the secondary. And again, I think he's he's one of the best safeties in the draft class. Mike Green, goodness gracious, I don't know if you guys seen what the dude can do to linemen. He's just throwing bodies off of them. And then I'll skip a few down to the 6th round. You take a place kicker in the 6th round. I believe he's one of the best in the business right now. It covers your tail for Justin Tucker. And then you get 11 picks, right? I mean, it's a league time 11 picks. So I mean, I'll let you go in depth of some other
Yeah.
guys, but anytime you can have 11 picks is a good draft because you're just going to open up the competition for your team, and competition is good for a team because if you got guys chomping at the bit for a guy that's been there for a while, and the guy that's been there for a while thinks, oh, it's my job, and then he gets benched for a guy that's been working his tail off, he's got to get better or he's going to be walking. And if he doesn't get better, you're getting better by the guy that's better than him already is playing. So competition just opens up a lot. Anytime you can bring in 11 guys, I mean, it's just going to help the team out a lot.
Yeah, unless you're the Eagles, then having a big draft class is just going to put you in a little bit of a box. Going to put you in a difficult situation because they're so good already. So our parameters for choosing our winners and losers for the teams was who had a good draft in your opinion versus a bad one, and who filled the most holes theoretically, right? That's assuming these prospects pan out and end up being good NFL football players. So the Ravens did both of those things. So according to NFL.com, which is where I'll be pulling the needs of these teams pre-draft from, they had offensive line, corner, safety, defensive line, and edge, according to NFL.com. So you bring in Malachi Starks, safety, probably the best safety in this class, was a 5-star prospect coming out of high school and top 15 ranked nationally. And then he will be able to play the deep safety role, allowing Kyle Williams to play. Kyle Hamilton. Jeez, sorry. Kyle Williams comes in later. So Kyle Hamilton allows him to play more towards the line of scrimmage and in the box, which is where he thrived last year, and where they just want to play him because he's big and physical. I believe he's 6'3", which is big as a safety.
6'3", 215, 220.
Yeah, big boy. And then you got, like you mentioned, Mike Green, a snipe at 59. He has off the field concerns with some character stuff, which happens a lot.
Who doesn't?
Players that go higher than him. He had character concerns, like I mentioned, and is a great player if he can stay on the field. He actually led college football in sacks. If you didn't know that, I think it was 17. It's either 17 or 19.
17.
17? Okay. So, yeah, we had, and like you again mentioned, overall brought in 11 players and filled almost all those gaps. I don't have their exact draft class up. That's on me. But I do, however, have a lot more to say about this next team's draft class, which is my team, the Las Vegas Raiders. So, wait, I'm brain dead. Hold on. I literally have a graphic up of the entire draft class.
Yeah,
Brain dead.
you have
Ignore
Ravens
me.
draft class. So,
Yeah, I
yeah,
literally have the. Yep. Yeah.
brain
I'm
rot.
just so excited to talk about my Raiders because they were winners from the draft that I actually got to pick, and I'm not just
And
being a
I'm gonna
biased Raiders fan.
I'm gonna say this before he gets to yapping about the Raiders. I mean, we're not biased. And just because we're favorite teams, we're going to get into my winner, and it's going to be the 49ers. And I just want to say we're not always biased. I will
Mm-hmm.
say, from his standpoint, he's got to be excited because I think the Raiders were also a winner for me. If we were doing three teams, the Raiders would be
Mm-hmm.
my third team that had a great draft class.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll let him talk about the Raiders. But again, we're not always this biased. And the Raiders
Mm-hmm.
did have a good draft class. He's not being biased right now.
Believe me, if the Raiders stink it up, you will hear me grill them often. So, like I mentioned in the for the Ravens, you had to fill in the gaps, right? The Raiders had a lot of gaps. They picked number 6. You have to suck if that's where you're picking, right? So, according to the NFL, they had running back, wide receiver, cornerback, offensive line, and linebacker. You know what they did? They filled those holes and then they built the gosh darn offense all off season, and I'm so happy about it. No longer am I watching Gardner Minshew and his mustache trot out there to not coach, quarterback my team instead of Aiden O'Connell's beautiful mustache. I had to watch Gardner Minshew and his mullet. He should have been in Florida playing pickleball with the elderly folk. All right. I digress.
Wow.
That I'm leaving that
Wow.
in last season. I'm leaving that in last season. He said it. He said that's what he did in the off season a couple years ago. That's so I'm just bringing it back. So now that I'm off my pedestal of dissing last year, we're here to a new regime. Pete Carroll and John Spytek are ready to bring the Raiders back to winning, which is what we need and what I need for my mental state. Starting off the draft, we brought in Ashton Genty, secured the top running back in the draft, and the Raiders, if you didn't know, had the worst run game in the league last year, being the worst in total rushing yards and yards per attempt. That's worse than the Cowboys. That's worse than every other team. I can't, off the top of my head, think of other teams that sucked, but the
I mean,
Raiders were the bottom.
what was? I mean, how many different running backs saw starting like were running for the? I mean, you got Amir Abdullah.
So I'm gonna miss a
So
couple, but Amir Abdullah, Zamir White, Sincere
Amir.
McCormick. Um, there was one more,
It
Alexander
just
Madison.
it wasn't. It didn't feel like there was a true number one back. I mean, if you just
No.
mentioned the Cowboys eventually found one.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Later in the year, I mean that's what they struggled. Now you got your
Mm-hmm.
one right there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Marshawn Lynch
With
2.0, in my opinion.
yeah, yeah, Ashton Genty, who also is going to play for Pete Carroll, who loves to run the football, and
I
Chip
don't know
Kelly
about
is
that.
their new offensive coordinator. Well, except for the 1 yard line, and Chip Kelly, who just coached the national championship team for college. Come on, I'm excited.
Correct.
I'm excited. Now we get to the next spot. Brought in more receiving threats, focusing on size and speed. Not only did we bring in Jack Besh in the second, but we also brought in Dante Thornton. If you didn't know, Jack Besh, 6'1", top 10 in the combine in both 3-cone and 20-yard shuttle. Also loved by analysts like Matt Harmon of Yahoo Sports. He has a good podcast. Check him out after this episode. That's where I get a lot of my ball knowledge, so that's why you know I can trust him. 74% win rate versus man coverage and 79% win rate versus press, according to Reception Perception, which is also a Matt Harmon-led website. And then Dante Thornton, who is out of Tennessee. I'd never heard of him, but then I look him up. I see, oh, he's 6'5". I love big receivers. Oh, but there's more. But wait, there's more. Like Billy Mays here. 6'5", ran a 4.3 40-yard dash. What lab was he made in? Because I would love to take a visit. 6'5", 4.3. Sign him up. Sign him up. He may not be ready this season, but you know what? I don't care. Get him on the field at some point,
And
please.
when we talk about this guy, we talked about it before. He reminds me a lot of Jawan Jennings. Jawan Jennings came out of Tennessee. Jawan
Mm-hmm.
Jennings wasn't ready his first year. He wasn't the
Mm-hmm.
guy that we were seeing now, where it's third and Jawan, right? He
Mm-hmm.
reminds me a lot of Jawan Jennings for the Niners, where he's just
Mm-hmm.
huge. He's got great hands, and just throw him the football and you're gonna go get it. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
fair and square.
Yeah. And then we got Pete Carroll's new prototypical cornerback in Darian Porter. So back in the day, Pete Carroll had Richard Sherman, who was also, correct me if I'm wrong, but he was a receiver turned corner, or was he a quarterback turned corner?
Richard Sherman.
Yeah, he was on offense.
Um, he went to Stanford, I believe, and he was with John Harbaugh,
He was a wide
which is
receiver.
kind of funny.
Oh, the
Yeah.
lines, the stars are aligning. Because you know what, Darian Porter used to play receiver. He's a 6'3" athletic freak who plays corner.
Where did where did he go to college?
Darian
I'm,
Porter.
I'm gonna find this right now.
I'm gonna find it for you. He went to Iowa State. Iowa State Cyclones.
Would be even funnier, right? If he went to Michigan and was under Harbaugh at Michigan. And full circle moment right there.
Yeah,
but
because if you
I'll let
didn't
I'll
know,
let you get
Pete
into it.
Carroll and Harbaugh hate each other, but we'll get to that over the season. But back to Darian Porter being an athletic freak, right? I mentioned he's 6'3", 6'2" or 3". He's big. I love big corners like I love big receivers, right? His 40-yard, 4.3 40-yard dash. He had the best 3-cone and best 20-yard splits for cornerbacks. This was a good corner class. Granted, not a lot of corners ran, and were a bunch of weirdos at the combine, but regardless, he was the best and led in legit basically all the corners, outside of like Maxwell Hairston, who went in the first round. W, happily. And then we've got brought in the trenches depth, because every year offensive linemen get hurt, every year defensive linemen get hurt, right? Last year the Raiders lost Christian Wilkins after paying him a lot of money, right? And then the Raiders also don't have a bona fide starting offensive line, right? And then you also have Colton Miller, who's kind of having some contract stuff. He's sitting out of, I think it's voluntary workouts, so he doesn't have to be there, but it'd be a good veteran to be there, because he's been a starter for his entire career. But with those questions, you got to bring in some guys, right? So we brought in, who all did we bring in? We brought in Caleb Rogers, Caleb Rogers and Charles Grant, sorry. Yeah. And then on defensive side, we brought in JJ Pegues. I looked it up and I watched a YouTube video on him. JJ Pegues is how you say his name, and Tonka Hemingway. Okay, first of all,
That dude's huge, right?
who doesn't
He sounds
want
like
a lineman named Tonka? I was like, I don't know who you are, but I love you now. Like, that's how that was. Like, early in the offseason, I wanted Jackson Dart solely for his last name. I hadn't watched a play of him. I heard Jackson Dart. I said, I want him at quarterback. Now later, I was like, I'm good. Whatever. Regardless, he's not a Raider. Time to focus on the Raiders. So we got Tonka Hemingway, who played both ways, believe it or not, and could be a fun chess piece for Chip Kelly and Patrick Graham. So Tonka Hemingway, like I mentioned, full-time, he majored in defensive line. But he also ran the ball, and he had a caught pass in his collegiate career. He had a touchdown and a 16-yard passing reception. Crazy. And then we got JJ Pegues, who also, believe it or not, started out his collegiate career at tight end. So we have two or three people in this draft. No. So we got Darian Porter, went from wide receiver to corner. We've got JJ, who went from tight end to now defensive tackle. And then Tommy Mellott was a quarterback, and he's going to go play wide receiver for the Raiders. We've got a whole bunch of people going a whole bunch of places. You know what that means? They are athletes. They are beasts. You know what that means? You need a chisel and a hammer and start picking away at them. Get them to be their finest and most pure player, and
diamonds.
The Raiders,
Diamonds in the rough.
Exactly. You know
Remember
what?
that song,
You know
Diamonds in the Rough. Diamonds
Yeah,
in
I
the
was
rough.
not a fan. So then you got the Raiders being not just good, but great in the next couple of seasons. You've heard it here first. So now that I will hop off my pedestal. Oh wait, hold on. I have more stuff. I'm sorry, I forgot. So JJ Pegues, back to him. Right, I had to scroll down a little bit. I had more notes on him. He's out of Ole Miss, if you didn't know, who was also like they had a great defensive line. Walter Nolan, JJ. There's one other guy I'm missing. Princely Uman Malayan also was good. So he moved to D tackle his sophomore year, like I mentioned. He totaled 29 tackles for loss and 10 sacks at defensive tackle. That's pretty dang good. Has high upside, prove it players who could prove big if they buy in, being the trenches. So we've got, like I mentioned, Caleb Rogers, Charles Grant, Tonka Hemingway, JJ Pegues, all high upside players who are clearly athletes that could really bring it in and make the Raiders a long-term playoff contender. So now we've got our losers of the draft. Starting off with Dak.
Wait, pause.
You have something for the Raiders, don't you?
I got something for the Raiders, but I still need to hit 49ers. We haven't did 49ers.
Yeah, I was getting ready. Did I skip that?
You said losers.
Sorry. Yeah, sorry. I also have it in the
49ers are not losers of the draft. No, but to get back onto your point of prove it guys, they have 3 guys from the FCS level. And 3 guys from the FCS level means 3 guys that are willing to prove it, that they're good enough. And it's the simple fact that if you're good enough, they're gonna come. You don't have to hit the portal. And I think in the day and age of the portal, this is a big test to three of those guys that said, "Hey, I'm going to stay at the schools that help me become me, and show loyalty." And I think that's a good stepping stone for college football in the day and age. That loyalty doesn't really exist anymore.
No.
But before you skipped my Niners,
yeah.
Okay, I think my Niners had one of the best draft classes there were. Again,
and
they had
ignore
11.
the graphic. That should say winners. That's on me. But now you can get to your winners from the draft, the 49ers. Go hop on your pedestal.
They had 11 draft picks. 11 league tying 11 draft picks. Their first 5 draft picks were all defense, which needed to happen. The 49ers were 29th in allowed scoring in points per game from opposing teams. You needed to fix it. You go out and you get a human truck, 6'5", 260 pounds, literally Nick Bosa all over again, and Michael Williams gonna play the edge. I mean, a beast. Alfred Collins, 6'6", 332 pounds at D tackle. We're getting younger on the defensive end, or the defensive side of the ball. Gonna have fun moving that guy out the way, and if you try, Nick Bosa is going to swim move, and he's got you inside. So they like to stunt a lot of the defensive line. You got Robert Saleh back. Fred Warner's on the defense again. He's going to get healthy. You went out and got Nick Martin. He's 6 foot, 221. I believe he's a stupid fast 40. He had the 5th fastest 40 at a 4.53 at the combine. So he's fast as crap. You got Upton Stout, who he's a corner. He's probably going to move to safety. He's from Western Kentucky. They just signed Diamador Lenore to a 5-year extension. He's the nickel corner, but if he gets hurt, I wouldn't be surprised if Upton Stout moves to the nickel spot. You're probably going to move Stout there. He is 5'9", so it might be a scary thing if he's getting thrown over as a safety, but he's quick, and I believe he's handsy. But he ran a 4.4 40. He also had 6 interceptions in 3 seasons. So he's doing his job. Because
the quarterback couldn't see him.
CJ West is probably one of my favorite picks. We'll get to my biggest winners. He's 6'1", 316. He's a run stopper. Like, you put CJ West and Alfred Collins in there, that's almost 700 pounds right there. Have fun moving those two in the interior. And as much as the defense, or the 49ers defense, is always switched out with different guys all the time, these 2 guys I love to death. I love CJ West just because I've seen him play. I've talked to him. I've met him. A great dude. And he's going to be able to make an impact right then and there. And then you go and get Jordan James in the 5th round. He's your Jordan Mason replacement. Jordan Mason, I believe, was traded to the Vikings.
It's like a glue factory. That's what the Niners are running.
you got a bowling ball right there. And Jordan James, he's 5'10", 205, but a run through a wall. He doesn't care. You went out and got Curtis Rourke. He's probably not gonna play a snap in the regular season, but he's gonna he's gonna be a locker room guy and a guy that knows the game of football. I think he spent 6 years in college football. Um, and he's also from Canada, so he's seen a lot of football. He knows how to
And
win. He's
Moose.
a winner. Uh, and Mooses.
Meese.
Um, so and then you went out and got another safety, obviously because Hufunga is gone. You address that, and you get a bit younger in the fifth round. And then you went and got Connor Colby. I believe he was honorable mention from the Big Ten, a 4-year starter at Iowa, and he could play guard and tackle. That helps a lot from a guy that he's 6'6", 309, so he can move all throughout the line. If injuries happen, it's going to be a guy that's going to get plugged in there pretty quick. He very good in run situations, as Iowa, we know, ran the ball really, really well all the time. I believe Caleb Johnson was the running back
Mm-hmm.
from
Yeah.
Iowa that went in the third or fourth round, somewhere around there. Might be the fifth round, but I feel like he was a third round guy. Um, but again,
He went to the Steelers.
yeah. Um, so you got another run guy. I mean, the 49ers love to run the ball. Um, if you can get Christian McCaffrey, excuse me, if you can get Christian McCaffrey healthy, goodness gracious, we're gonna be feeling it.
Yeah.
And we're getting younger, and that's the thing that the 49ers had to do was get younger. I think they were one of the older teams in the NFL. You had to get younger. Um, I mean, my notes here were again the first 5 picks were defense, and the defense needed to improve, and
Yeah.
that's what I'm so happy about because George Kittle just fixed his contract stuff. Brock Purdy's gonna fix his contract stuff. They're all gonna get it all figured out. He's at voluntary workouts right now, so he wants to be there. Guys are wanting to figure it out. I mean, you went 6-11 last year. That's nothing Kyle Shanahan has done. I mean, yeah, he had a bad year where they ended up taking Trey Lance at 3. I believe they traded up for that pick anyways. But again, that was a very down year. They had a down year, I believe, when Nick Bosa was a draft pick in 2019. They had the second overall pick and then went to the Super Bowl the next year. So I wouldn't surprise me if the Niners made it deep into the playoff run. The NFC West just got a whole lot better with a bunch of offseason moves that we're going to talk about throughout this podcast. But I think the Niners had a really, really good draft. On paper, we'll see how everything pans out with the teams. But address the defense, and that's the main thing we needed to do this year was address the defense.
Yeah. So, like I mentioned before, and I will continue to mention, I take in a lot of football, right? Whether it be podcasts, whether it be YouTube videos, whether it be watching some sort of film, whatever it is, I'm probably taking it in some way, shape, or form, right? Well, the podcast I was listening to today mentioned the fact that not only did the 49ers bring in a lot of defense, they focus on run stoppers, right? Now, you can speak to this better than I can, but the Niners have not been good at stopping the run. Mykel Williams, like you mentioned, is Nick Bosa, but the run stopper version. From what I've heard and what I've seen.
Yeah.
Alfred Collins,
I mean, that's
you
what his
mentioned,
film
he's a
says.
big, beefy boy. Same with Nick Barton. You said
6'6".
700 pounds. That's tush push who? Exactly. And going back to the Iowa mention, so yeah, Caleb Johnson went to the third round at pick 83. So yeah, and then the glue factory, I think that joke went over your head. You turn a horse into a glue. Horse into glue. Workhorse of the offense is typically the running back. It's a glue factory. They work them and then they ship them out. Glue factory.
Yeah,
So,
that
I
makes
digress.
sense because Raheem Mostert was gone.
Yep.
There's so many.
He's a Raider
There's
now,
Tevin
by the way.
Coleman.
Raheem Mostert's a
Tevin
Raider.
Coleman was gone. I mean, there's so many guys that were running back twos and that are going to RB1 somewhere else.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah.
And like you mentioned, going back to the record, yeah, this is the worst the 49ers have been since 2020, where they also went 6-10. This year they went 6-11 because of the bump up in, one more game. But So now we're done with our winners from the draft. Time to get a little negative for our teams,
Woohoo.
right? So it's a little fun to dog on some teams after having so much happiness, right? You need to let it out. So our first loser is from Dak. We've got the Panthers. Take it away.
So I don't really like the value that they took Tet McMillan at 8. I don't really like the pick. I think they could have traded back, and I think that's on the front office of knowing, all right, what value you have at 8 and who you really want to get, and if the guy you really want to get is gonna fall, move back, like move back and figure it out. I think the Trevor Etienne pick was also it was also rushed. I don't really like it. Now, I do like the Jimmy Horn Jr., who is not related to J.C. Horn, who is also on the Panthers. I like the Nick Sorton pick because I think he was overshadowed by Shamar Stewart throughout his time at A&M. But you went edge, and then you went edge right again in the third round. So you go from one edge, like, oh, I think this guy can play. He's gonna make an impact. But then we're gonna go draft another edge right after that. Like, what value are you getting in this draft class? That you're not spreading your picks around. It's like you're gonna draft 3 tight ends. If you go to the first round and second round and you draft 2 tight ends, if they're both really good, how are you gonna keep them on the field at the same time? Unless they're anticipating on starting them both on 2 different edges, it just doesn't make sense to me. To go edge and then edge again, and then they didn't draft an offensive lineman. You mentioned earlier, offensive linemen always get hurt, and defensive linemen always get hurt. I don't believe they drafted a D tackle either. They didn't.
They drafted
So
one
your
D tackle
interior
in the fifth round.
in the 5th round.
Yeah,
Oh
Cam
yeah,
Jackson.
Cam Jackson. Sorry.
But also
Yeah,
Princely
but
Amon
again, no
Malayan
O tackle.
is a defensive lineman. I don't know why he's listed outside linebacker, but he was a defensive tackle edge.
He's listed edge on ESPN right
Yeah.
now, but again, no offensive lineman to me just screams, "What are we doing?" And they had one of the
Mhm.
below average offensive lines in the year, and you always need to get younger when it comes to O linemen. You just have to, because O linemen retire early. 6-7 years is a good years for O linemen. If you got an O lineman that you're getting 12, 13 years at, it's a great O lineman, and he's probably going to end up in the Hall of Fame somewhere or a Ring of
Yeah.
Honor for a team.
Yeah.
And not drafting an lineman to me just stuck out like a sore thumb when I was like, what are we doing right now?
Yeah.
And I mean, there's probably players in here that are gonna pan out. Like I said, I like the Mitchell Evans pick, just because he's been a good guy at Notre Dame for a bunch of years. He feels like he's been there about 4 years, and I think he's been there 3. And I think he was playing as a freshman because that's when Cole Kmet came out. Was the year before that. So I don't necessarily hate every single pick, but it's probably one of the worst draft classes there is here, just because value, picks, and like what they need, like it just nothing was clicking to me.
Yeah. So I have a couple points on this as well. So with the Tedero McMillan pick, I could see where he could fall, right? But then you also have to think the Jets take the pick right after them. They have Garrett Wilson, then who? So I could have seen them being like, hey, he could go to the Jets at number 9. And then to speak to Nick Scorton, I agree. I think Nick Scorton could be a good prospect coming in because when he was playing at Purdue, he played, I think it's either 30 or 50 pounds less than he did at A&M. So A&M had him beef up. He got slow, obviously he got slow, and didn't perform as well as he did at Purdue.
Faster.
Yeah.
Someone's getting
If you're
faster
getting
than
yeah,
50
if you're
pounds.
putting on 30 to 50 pounds as a defensive lineman and you're getting
Let
faster,
me know. Let me know what you're
but and then he dropped that weight going into the combine and he tested really well. Go figure. So I do agree with that pick. And then Nick Scorton. So Nick Scorton and Princely Amon Malayan. I'm gonna disagree with you there. I think that's a good pick because the Panthers defense sucked. I couldn't find the exact stats, but I'm pretty sure they were bottom 3 in ranking in terms of like the whole shebang. So they stunk like big time. Now that's big time because Derek Thomas got hurt and was out most of the season. Derek Thomas, is that his name? Am I blanking? Derek Thomas seems
Sounds
like
about Derek
hold
Brown
on.
or
Derek Brown, that's the one. Derek Thomas is the linebacker from the Chiefs from the 2000s. Um,
Derek
Derek Brown,
Brown is
yeah,
from Auburn. He's a D
yeah, he
tackle.
got
He
hurt.
wore
Yeah,
number
he got
8
hurt.
and at Auburn, I'm
Mm-hmm.
pretty sure.
Yeah, so he got hurt last year, which is a big problem with their defensive line. That really hurt him. But outside of that, I do agree. I don't know. It just seemed like they were throwing darts at a dartboard. It doesn't seem like there was much of a plan.
Blindfolded.
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 Yeah.
Right? They weren't even
'Cause-
like looking at, oh, how many points do we need to secure the win in the game of darts?
Yeah.
We were blindfolded throwing them. That's what
Yeah.
it looked like.
Yeah, because they just brought in Chuba Hubbard. And then, who was the other running back that they brought in last year? Or was it just Chuba Hubbard?
Miles Sanders.
Was it Miles Sanders? Oh, he's a bum.
Chuba,
Whatever.
Chuba just got he just got a restructure. He got an extension. That's what he did last year. They brought in Miles Sanders last year, and I believe he's a free agent. He's gone. So
They also brought...
He's
Oh,
not
it's
a
Jonathan
free agent.
Brooks. That's the name I'm looking for. Jonathan Brooks was who they brought in.
yeah,
That's who it was. He just kept getting hurt. So I
Yeah.
don't know what they're doing with Trevor Etienne, but I guess we'll see. They'll probably end up at the bottom of the NFC South again, but who knows. So my first losers. So I didn't really have losers of the draft, right? I didn't think a team had like, oh, this was so bad. Like, what are you doing? Like, why didn't you totally missed it, right? But I did have 3 teams of classes that I wasn't a fan of, and this is gonna get some backlash from any friends or family that is watching this because I'm from Indiana, and almost all of my family is Colts fans. So click away now if you don't want to be mad at me later.
or just skip to when I get to talking.
Or skip to when he's talking. But yeah, so I had the Colts, the Buccaneers, and the Falcons. Starting off the Colts, I didn't like their lack of offensive lineman draft. I also didn't like that they took. Now, this is not to say Tyler Warren is not going to be a dog. He very well could be, right? I just think that tight end is a luxury pick, and the Colts shouldn't have that luxury, especially when their offense is stacked to the gills already. Tight end was the only gap that they had on the offense. Outside of the line, you dropped off 2 starters this year to the Vikings. Offensive lineman starters are gone. Ryan Kelly and Will Fries are both gone. They're playing in Minnesota now. So what'd you do? Nothing. They didn't draft anybody. They didn't bring anybody in. They didn't take a single offensive lineman, to my knowledge. No, they took one guy in the 4th round. That's what I have in my notes. That's one guy in the 4th round. Looking at their depth chart, projected depth chart right now, their starters for this season at those 2 positions are a 3rd rounder and a 4th rounder that they took last year. I'd never heard of either of them. Apparently, they played quite a bit last year because of all the injuries, but I guess that remains to be seen. I just didn't like the lack of offensive line, and I didn't love the Tyler Warren pick. It was pretty much written in the stars that he was going there. But I didn't like that Jahdae Barron and Jalen Walker were both sitting there, and the Colts have had a horrendous secondary for a while. I get it. They got a new defensive coordinator in Lou Anarumo, and he's supposedly a lot better than Gus Bradley. Now, as somebody who was a fan of a team that Gus Bradley used to be a coach for, I get that. Gus Bradley's scheme was very vanilla. It was cover 3 all the time. So if you figured out how to beat cover 3, you were probably getting a first down. And it's a very bend, don't break defense. But that leads me to believe, like, okay, you should be playing freely, right? It shouldn't be like, oh, where should I be? Where should I be? This, that, and that. That shouldn't be how his defense was. It should have been very, very freely. And hearing so many Colts fans be like, man, our defense sucks, should probably bring in more defensive help.
They did though. They
Okay,
did
they
bring
got
in
Charvarius Ward. Yes, but that's one
and
guy.
Cam Bynum.
And Cam Bynum. That's 2 guys. So yes.
So they brought in a safety and a corner, and I think with Kenny Moore already being there,
But
Juju
Kenny Moore is
Brents was
old
playing
and not
decently.
good anymore.
He's a good slot corner. He's probably
Yeah,
one of
you
the
know who
best
else
slot
would have been
man
good?
corners.
Jahdae Barron. Now, it could just be me because I have kind of a draft crush on him, but he would have been good. So the next team we had is the Buccaneers. Well, I had, rather. I just didn't like that they took Emeka Egbuka. why the rich did not need to get richer. They have Chris Godwin, Mike Evans, Jalen McMillan turned out pretty well. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm sure Baker Mayfield was throwing a party wherever he was when he found out Emeka Buka was going to them. But just with
Spamming that
they didn't need
beat,
another
but
receiver. Again, going back to the team needs, according to the NFL's website, they needed a linebacker, cornerback, edge, safety, and offensive line. And again, Jahdae Barron was right there. He was there. And he went the next pick, and Jahdae Barron played both corner and safety, and those are two of your needs. Every year we hear about the Buccaneers' defensive secondary getting blasted and getting hurt. He was right there. That's all I'm going to say. And then the Falcons. So in my notes, I hate the trade and that's all. But the longer I looked at it and the more I heard about what they did this offseason, the more I was like, what are they doing? Right? So if you didn't know, the Falcons didn't take a single offensive player in their draft. They did all defense, right? And that's good to a degree because their defensive line has stunk for like a long time, like probably since I was born.
they got stars on the offensive end. Don't get me wrong. They do have some stars.
Yes, but Ray McLeod is their number 3 receiver.
Hey.
Darnell Mooney is their number 2. I love me some Darnell Mooney, but he should be number 3. This wide receiver class was too deep for them to not throw a dart at a receiver. And Drake London, like, we have too many wide receiver injuries every year to not take at least one receiver.
Yeah.
But going back to that trade, so here is the trade that drove me nuts. Here is the exact thing. So, reading from ESPN's website, Atlanta had to send its first-round pick in 2026 to the Rams, plus a second and a 7th rounder in the 2025 NFL Draft, to move up to grab James Pierce Jr. The Falcons also got a 2023 round pick in the swap. So if James Pierce doesn't look like, if he doesn't pan out, which I hope for his sake he does, and Jalen Walker's sake, because they have so much pressure on their shoulders to turn this around. I just didn't love it. I just didn't love it. But
I mean,
that's my.
1, 2, 3. They only had 5 picks. So
they traded 2 of them away.
They didn't pick from 5 to 6. They addressed. They did take an offensive tackle in the 7th round.
Oh, well, there you
I
go.
believe. And Jack Nelson, so they did address a little bit of offense. But I like Jalen Walker, so I'm very, very high on him. I think he's one of the most
I also really
versatile
like
draft
Jalen
picks.
Walker.
And I like Xavier Watts. I think
Mhm.
he reminds me a lot. I believe of his size. He's a smaller version of Kyle Hamilton. I believe is both came out of Notre Dame, so I like that. But I mean, you only have 5 picks. It's hard to do something with 5 picks. So
Well,
I'm with you there on that draft class.
so now we've got our last loser of the teams going to Dak with the Cleveland Browns. And if you're a Browns fan, you might as well click off the episode now, unless you're mad too, because they're about to get dunked on quite a bit.
Yeah. For the next probably 15 minutes, the Browns are going to get dunked on. I don't understand why we have 5 quarterbacks on the roster. Someone's going to have to get traded. You draft 2 quarterbacks. You're wasting a 3rd round pick on Dylan Gabriel. He's 5th round. Like, he's 5th round potential in my eyes. He's a left-handed guy. We talked about it. You said he should be on the Dolphins.
Yeah, I'll get to that.
I don't know
you
why.
Get to your stuff.
I don't know why we have 5 quarterbacks on the roster. Yeah, if you've seen the draft picture of everybody after the Shador thing, no one looked happy. If you're a Browns fan, go ahead and go to the store and get some paper bags because you're probably going to be throwing them over your head to go watch these games. But from the notes, I believe they traded back, so that helped them a little bit. You did get Mason Graham, who's pretty darn good player. Pretty good run stopper, I believe. But after that, it's like you got a good linebacker You got Judkins, and I think he's going to replace what Nick Chubb left there. Harold Fannin, I've seen him firsthand. He's pretty darn good. But the next three picks,
Not a Dylan Sampson guy.
I don't know what we're doing. I just you can't have five quarterbacks on your roster, Ant. You just can't do it.
No, you can't.
Like
Especially, yeah.
that's almost a fifth of your roster. A
Mhm.
53-man roster. Granted, somebody's hitting the practice squad,
Mhm.
but there's four right there.
Yep.
Like you can't you bring in you just traded for Kenny Pickett, and I believe they gave up a 6th-round
Itty
pick
bitty
for Kenny
baby
Pickett.
hands.
You bring in Joe Flacco. Joe Flacco's got to stay. He's gonna
Get the
have
Walker.
to teach these young guys. He's gonna have to teach them. Who's gonna teach him? Kenny Pickett. What does he have? What can he teach?
Joe Flacco.
I
didn't
don't
really
want
teach
Deshaun-
last year, so.
I don't want Deshaun Watson teaching me anything. I'm sorry, but I don't. And like
Yeah.
he's got what one playoff series under his belt, maybe two. Deshaun Watson. Joe Flacco's won a Super
Probably.
Bowl. So unless they're getting ready to say, hey, Deshaun Watson, we're just going to take all the money and we're just going to give it to you, but we don't want you on this team anymore.
Mhm.
Like, that's the only explanation I have for that. But 5 quarterbacks. I mean, granted, I'm a Niners fan, so 2023 or whatever, when we're playing the Eagles in the NFC Championship game, yeah, if we have 5 quarterbacks, then I'm happy. You know, I don't have Joe Johnson throwing to somebody, and then we have Christian McCaffrey throwing to somebody. Like, I'm happy then, but no. Just no. No. No, 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 no. No. We don't need 5 quarterbacks. Save some for the rest of the league. That's my rant. That's my rant.
Okay.
That's why I don't like them.
So
That's why
let
they're
me
losers.
so I had some takes about the Browns too. I like the Mason Graham pick. You get Myles Garrett, a little bit of a running mate. That's great. I hate the Browns for taking Carson Schwessinger. Sorry, his last name always gives me troubles. I can't say it one time. I hate that they took him because I wanted him on the Raiders so bad, so bad. Everything that I'd seen and heard from him, I wanted him on the team. Another draft crush of mine. Judkins is great. Harold Fannin Jr. I don't really get the pick because they have David Njoku. Unless they're going to run more 2 tight end sets, I could see that. Unless they're getting ready to ship Njoku out. I know sometimes he has some injuries going on because of fantasy football. But and then Dylan Gabriel. So the last person I'll talk about in their draft class for now. So my thing is the Dolphins need a backup lefty quarterback, right? So hold on. Before I get to the Dolphins part, I don't like short quarterbacks, and I don't like lefty quarterbacks. You put a bow on it with Dylan Gabriel. He's short and a lefty, right? And he's only 200 pounds. That's not very much for a quarterback. He's going to get broken in half, right? So now that I'm away from that part with the Browns, the Dolphins missed an opportunity to get him. I get he went in the 3rd round, which is probably a little rich. But the Dolphins always have trouble when Tua gets hurt. Their backups always suck. And I have a little theory of my head, and I hope to God and for every Dolphins fan in this face of this earth that I'm wrong. But I think the reason the Dolphins always suck after the Tua goes down is because all of their backups are right-handed quarterbacks. You know what happens when you go from this being the way you read a field to this? I don't even know how lefties hold a football. You read the field differently. It's completely flip-flopped, right? So in my mind, you have to flip your entire play every time, every flip-flop. It's not the same playbook. It's not. So Dylan Gabriel is not a good fit for the Browns because all their other quarterbacks are right-handed. And he should have gone to the Dolphins. He should probably be playing in the CFL because he's short. Anyways, I promise I don't like I promise it's not because I don't like short people. All right? I promise you that's not what it is. It's just in professional sports I don't get it. at least at quarterback, because even Sam Ellinger, when I went to the Colts training camp a couple years back, looked like a freaking dwarf in that backfield, and he's 6'2". That's how tall I am, right?
Hey,
I may not look tall in this
Leonard's
chair,
gonna do
but
well.
at 6'2", he looked itty bitty. So you need to be 6'3" plus, right? That's in my mind. You can't be getting swallowed up in that pocket, because look at Kyler Murray. At least he's fast, and Russell Wilson, and I know there's other people I'm missing, but I digress. Enough of the losers from the draft in terms of teams. We have losers for prospects and winners for prospects, right? So with this, now that we've decided which teams, in our eyes, won or lost this draft, let's talk about the prospects that won or lost this draft. And excuse me. So the favorites and least favorite picks could be from based on scheme fit, could be steal of the draft or a reach, and you could just like the player, right? But this first pick, we don't like this player. We don't like him at all, really.
Do you want me to start on it?
Yeah,
'Cause,
we've got.
my
We're
take
starting
order
with,
says we have Mason Graham first.
he's
but
not the
we can-
first
I can
pick.
get into Shedeur.
He's not the first pick. We're talking about Shedeur Sanders. I just threw the
Okay.
graphic up. We don't like Shedeur at all. Dak, you can take this away, but I'll bring up the.
It's not that we. It's not that we don't like Shedeur as a person.
I don't
because
like- okay,
obviously, I don't really like to say I don't like anybody.
Mhm.
I mean, we have our reasons to not associate. But I just I don't understand how you can prepare for a job and just flat out not care.
Mhm.
And it just screams I've been handed everything in my whole life and I've never had to work for anything.
Mm.
Because if me and you went to go get a job interview, we got to prepare for it.
Mhm.
We got to be ready for every question we could possibly get. And what I'm hearing is Shedeur Sanders did not do that. And in fact, he fought back when he was told that he was in the wrong to
Mhm.
places. Okay. So there's that sad bit. Okay, he's not okay, some players don't have good. He went to the Browns. His dad said like 2 months ago, when asked if we're gonna go to the Browns, he goes, "I'm praying for the Giants," and completely ignores the fact that his son could be going to the Browns. What they thought was pick number 3. He lasted to the 5th round at what, 144?
At 144.
Like, and by the way, the Browns have 5 quarterbacks on their roster, 4 of which are playing this year. Deshaun, I don't know what he's doing or if he's allowed to do anything. But still, we have 4 quarterbacks on the roster. He's not playing. Shedeur's probably not going to play.
Mhm.
And I think Deion's going to be Deion, and he's going to get involved, as any dad should. But he's a professional athlete. We got to let him be a professional athlete. And I don't know if Shedeur is ready to be a professional athlete. But on the good side of everything with Shedeur, I have to give a shout out to Shiloh Sanders because he's got his own thing going on. He wasn't drafted. I think he was picked up from the Buccaneers. He's a big
Mhm.
brother, and every big brother should be looking out for the little brother. And he was there to support his little brother Shedeur the whole weekend through everything. And then he's got a chance to go show what he can do at the Buccaneers system. But yeah, I don't like the fit. I don't like the way that you just think that you can get whatever you want because your last name is Sanders, and when you're doing interviews, you say, "Do you guys not know who my last name is? It's Sanders. Of course, we're gonna be athletic." Like, it just sounds very arrogant to me, and I need you to prove it. And since you have the biggest chip on your shoulder in the world, if you go and prove it, I will be stand corrected, and I will be happy for you, and I will be happy to sit here and say I was wrong.
Mhm.
But you gotta prove it. You gotta prove it, dude.
Yeah, I think I have a lot of similarities in my takes for him. So, like I mentioned with Dylan Gabriel, I'm not a big fan of short quarterbacks, and I'm not a big fan of lefty quarterbacks, right? I am, however, a big fan of quarterbacks that can lead a room. All right, I'm a big character guy when it comes to a lot of things in my life. and I believe that quarterbacks, one, should be leaders, and should, two, be able to tell you when they're wrong, right? Now that we're recording this on Wednesday, we have now seen and heard more about the interview process with Shadur. After the combine, we heard, oh, the interviews didn't go very well, but nobody said anything. Now it's coming out that he was shown interceptions that he threw, and he took no blame for it. During the college football season, we saw that he was blaming his teammates. That's a big no-go for me. The second during this offseason that the Raiders' name was attached to Shadur Sanders, I was scared and worried for my life. So when we traded for Geno Smith, I was the happiest guy ever. And I'm not even a big Geno Smith guy. But getting us away from Shadur, I was ecstatic. So yeah, Shadur just made a clown of himself this entire offseason and should have understood that this is a business, that this is a job, and that you need to be professional. I understand having a bit of an ego and a bit of like, hey, I did this, but you didn't do much. Like Dak said, and we all know now, he was drafted in the 5th round. So a little funny, sad story before we get to our next loser or winner. I don't remember which is on the script next. But when Thursday came around, I got off work, and like I mentioned, I have an hour commute to and from work. So I called my wife. I was like, hey, I need you to have the draft on. The Raiders pick at 6. It's going to be really close by the time I get home. So I get home. We're sitting on the couch. I looked at her. I said, honey, I need you to lock in with me. I need you to be excited about this. And the Browns were on the clock. Dun, 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 dun. With the 5th pick in the 2025 NFL Draft, the Cleveland Browns select defensive tackle Mason Graham. We're cheering. But then you got to lock in. You got to reel it back in because the Raiders could draft Shadur at number 6. But you know what they didn't do? They took Ashton Jeanty. And all was right in the world again. So for the next 2 days, she would ask me. She knew 2 players from this draft. She knew Ashton Jeanty, and she knew Shadur Sanders. I was just sitting at my desk watching the draft. She'd go, has Shadur been taken yet? Nope. And we laughed. And then we'd say, hey, the Raiders are up next. Let's see what happens. Did you guys take Shadur? No. We laughed, and we carried on. And then the 5th round came, and he was picked. And I go, honey, it finally happened. He got picked. And this is not to say that I'm cheering on his downfall. I would never do such a thing. But it is to say that this is a learning moment, which, ask Dak, I am a big proponent of, if you don't get it right, you better learn from it. And Shadur better learn from it, or he's going to have a lot of hurting the rest of his life. That's all we have for the Shadur stuff.
You mentioned a lot of that stuff there with draft process.
Mm-hmm.
But I will attest, I did see his wife in Raiders gear.
Mm-hmm.
And I will attest, my girlfriend does love the da-na-na, or the draft sound. Do it again. I can't remember.
What is it? I locked. Dun, 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 dun. I lost it. Anyways.
Something like that, yeah.
The draft
sound's iconic. Yeah, it's iconic.
Yeah.
So, great weekend for us.
Yeah. So our next loser is Mason Graham, who is my only loser from the draft outside of Shadur Sanders. And it's not because Mason Graham is a loser. It's not because he's not a good football player. It's not because he wasn't a great prospect. All right? It's because he's playing for the Browns. And that's why. Right? In his little interview, after he gets drafted, he walks out on stage, he gets his jersey, puts on his hat, hugs Goodell, everything. He has his little interview. And you know what the poor guy says in his interview? He goes, I'm ready to win a Super Bowl. Buddy, you're going to be waiting until your 2nd or 3rd contract for that, because it ain't going to be with the Browns. Unless something crazy happens, you're not winning in the Browns uniform. I'm sorry. You're going to have to join a long list of Browns greats who never touched the Super Bowl. You might touch a playoff or 2, but you're not touching that chip. That was literally the only reason why he was a loser on my book.
They're gonna let him walk like they let Baker walk, and he's gonna go do great things. So
yeah,
4 or 5
I hope so
years,
for him.
We're probably gonna see that.
I
But
hope so for him.
if you're a Browns fan, you can now return. I don't know
Hmm.
where we're at time, but if you're a Browns fan, you can return now. We're done.
About an
Done yapping
hour.
about the Browns.
We're like 10 seconds from an hour. So it was so the Browns fans had to take like a 25-minute hiatus.
Sorry.
They're gonna watch half
Sorry.
the video. I'll be sure to tell the Browns fans at work.
I believe
Your
the
Dax
my
favorites,
first
yeah.
winner.
I have all three of
Yeah.
them on there, so just
Matt.
rattle them
Okay.
off.
So Matthew Golden. Again, they finally did it. That's my initial thought. They finally
Mm-hmm.
drafted a receiver, but he's gonna be wide receiver 2 there. I believe Christian Watson's gonna be done for majority of the year. Um, and he's joining a pretty stacked receiver class. And he's got Jordan Love, who I compared to, Pat Mahomes and Aaron Rodgers out of college, in 2020 when they took him. He reminds me so much of those two. He can sling the rock down the field, and if Matthew Golden, he had the fastest time as a 40 as a receiver, so he's quick. He's going to be able to take the top open for the top
Mm-hmm.
off the defenses for Romeo Dobbs and all those guys. And then he's going to have to keep defenses honest because if you put him in the slot, this safety's going to have to scoot back a little bit. And guess who's running the football down there or up there in the cold weather? Josh Jacobs. You know a thing or
Mm-hmm.
two about that guy.
I do.
So I just think that helps out the whole team. And I'm excited and I love the pick. I think he's going to fit well there. My next
Mm-hmm.
one is CJ West. Again, I love the dude. Indiana guy. Uh, he's going to fit really well there too. They needed run stopping defense, and that's what he excels at the most is a run
In the
stopping
fourth round
defense. Because
too.
if you get inside or close to CJ West, you might as well just fall down because he's gonna get you. Um, he's not that big compared to the other D tackle they took, but goodness gracious,
Mm-hmm.
he's gonna fit well there, and I'm happy that he's in a system as the 49ers. And I believe my last one is Charles Grant.
Yep.
Um, and
Raiders.
is a Raiders guy, and again, I said I'm not biased here for Ant. I think this guy's got a great story. He's at William and Mary. He was wrestling there, and then started playing football, and started throwing guys, put a bunch of weight on, and he had transfer portal teams going, "Hey, you want to come play here?" And he said, "No, I'm gonna stay here. I'm gonna show my loyalty to the team that gave me a chance." And I was in the NFL. I think he's going to be a project guy that is going to work out probably very well for the Raiders. You mentioned it earlier about what's going on with their offensive line. I think he's going to do well there, and he's another guy that's just going to prove it. And these last two guys are two guys that I mentioned that are going to prove it.
Mm-hmm.
They work hard, and they're not a guy that just they've had the noise around them their whole life.
Mm-hmm.
And Charles Grant, I mean, former wrestler now in the NFL. So
Mm-hmm.
I just think that's pretty darn cool.
Yeah, I'm all for an underdog story. As somebody who used to go really late when playing pickup football, I am all for an underdog story. We all know how that turned out. All right, so now we've got my favorites. We've got Travis Hunter, we've got Kyle Williams. So Kyle Williams, who I mentioned earlier, this is who I'm most talking about. So we've got Travis Hunter. The number one reason he's one of my favorites and why I think he's a winner of this NFL draft, he's not playing for the Browns. Gotcha. So
Goodness.
outside of that,
Sorry, Browns fans.
I think he has to be a corner first, then a receiver, right? Because corners and defenses as a whole have to have way too much communication to be to minor basically in defense, right? So you know who has a much better surrounding than the Browns does? The Jaguars, right? Because you have
Franchise quarterback over there.
got a franchise quarterback when he wants to play offense. He has a true number one receiver in Brian Thomas Jr. And then on the defensive side, he has a pass rush. Not that the Browns don't have that, because Lord have mercy, do they? Especially now that they get brought in Mason Graham. But they have a pass rush, and they have vets to surround him. Now, they're not like crazy vets, right? But they're people who are going to be there, right? And with this new what's the word? The new front office, I guess. I'm not going to use the analogy for it. The new front office that they have in James Gladstone and Liam Cohen, Duval, right? Yeah, That's so much better than what's going on in the Browns. I picture the little dog meme where it's like everything is fine and everything's on fire around him. Yeah, that's the Browns. Poor Kevin Stefanski, because he's a good coach. That's the only bright side for those Browns quarterbacks, is they were getting coached by Kevin Stefanski. So they got to ride out that contract and get the heck out of Dodge. But Travis Hunter is a big winner because he gets to play in Jacksonville, which is a lot warmer and nicer than Cleveland. And it's just a better organization as a whole, right? Not great by any means, but it's a lot better. And then we have Kyle Williams, who is a receiver and went to the Patriots, if you didn't know. The 69th pick in the NFL draft. Nice, first of all. And while I can't speak to his game, I have heard nothing but good things from different analysts like Daniel Jeremiah, who I'm sure most of you have heard of, and Greg Rosenthal of NFL Daily. Both of them rant and rave about him, especially Greg, talking about how he can stop on a dime and he's really fast and he catches the ball well. And I believe he's going to a good situation for two reasons. One, there's no certified number one receiver, right? You have Jalen Polk, Javon Baker, Kayshon Boutte, and then Stephon Diggs. Depending on how that ACL holds up, I'm hoping that he stays good because he's a good football player and he's fun to watch. And he's been in the league a long time. Like, Minneapolis Miracle was him. Minnesota. It's the same thing.
Minnesota!
And then we've got, he also gets to play in a likely run-heavy scheme, which means he'll have time to develop, and he can show flashes of his athleticism and his ability without having to be a big stat sheet patter. So I would keep an eye out on him for like a late flyer in fantasy football. Give Drake May another target. So that's all we have.
Thanks for the tip.
Yeah, not for you. As we compete in a dynasty league, which I'm sure you will hear plenty about throughout this podcast.
You're going to hear tons and tons about dynasty peeps, fantasy football, 14-man, double flex, 3 defensive players, fantasy dynasty league. That is just amazing.
We're both.
We probably can do an episode just on how our teams are looking this year or something like that. As
but
again, stay with us through all of
but
this.
But we shouldn't, so we probably won't. Because yeah. So what's left and what's next? Like, what's our next episodes looking like? We've got a whole lot. So if you've got any ideas of what you want to look for, hit the comment section. But off the bat, I was writing them down at work, actually, some possibilities. So we've got division rankings. That's fun. Maybe we'll drop a poll. We'll drop a poll on our YouTube. So we got division rankings, team rankings within the division. So like AFC West, you got the Chiefs, Chargers, Broncos, Raiders. Wins over under. Sorry. Wins over under. So like go through.
Later
yeah,
on
that could be a fun like. Well, I'm saying like total wins over under, like early in the off season. I did that last year and I didn't hit my bet. Position rankings, like where do the players land on their rankings, like maybe a top 10, and then fantasy football, which will also come later. But I'll drop a poll in our community tab. Let us know what you think. Let us know what you want to know. I know what we know, and that's ball. I hope you guys enjoyed. Feel free to leave a like, comment, and subscribe, and tell your friends and family that these two knuckleheads that drop weekly football podcasts, they know ball.
We know ball.
Ball.